Robert Chen was the richest man in the city. He lived in a big house on top of a hill. From his windows, he could see the whole city below. He had 10 cars, each one more expensive than most people's homes. He had watches that cost more than what most people earn in a year. He had everything money could buy. But Robert was not happy. Every morning, he woke up alone in his king-sized bed. His huge house was quiet and empty. The only sounds came from the staff who worked for him. The cook, the cleaner, the gardener. They smiled at him, but their smiles were not real. They smiled because he paid them. Robert was 45 years old. He had no wife, no children, no real friends, only business partners and people who wanted his money. "Mr. Chen, your breakfast is ready," said Maria, his cook. Robert went downstairs to his large dining room. The table could seat 20 people, but only one place was set. As usual, he ate alone. The food was perfect, but he barely tasted it. After breakfast, Robert got into his newest car, a black sports car that cost more than $1 million. He drove to his office building, the tallest one in the city with his name on top. In the office, people rushed around him. "Good morning, Mr. Chen," they all said. They nodded and smiled. But as soon as he passed, they stopped smiling. Robert knew this. He had seen it in the reflection of the glass walls many times. At lunchtime, Robert met with his usual group of rich friends at an expensive club. Only members who paid a lot of money could enter this place. The group sat at their regular table. "I just bought another island," said William, one of the men. "This one has its own airport." "That's nothing," said Thomas, another rich man. "I just ordered a yacht so big it has its own helicopter pad." Robert listened but didn't care. He had an island too. He had a yacht too. These things didn't make him feel good anymore. "What about you, Robert?" asked Michael, looking at him. "What new toy did you buy this week?" Robert shrugged. "Nothing new." The men looked surprised. Robert always bought the biggest and best things. "Are you sick?" joked Thomas. The great Robert Chen not spending money. "Maybe I'm just tired of buying things," Robert said. The table went quiet. Then David, the newest member of their group, spoke up. David had only joined their club last month. He was rich too, but different somehow. "Maybe Robert has realized what I realized years ago," David said, "that all this money can't buy what really matters." The other men laughed loudly. "What nonsense," said William. "Money buys everything." David shook his head. "No, it doesn't. When was the last time any of you felt truly happy? Not just showing off, but really happy inside?" No one answered. Robert thought hard but couldn't remember. "I have an idea," said David, looking straight at Robert. "A dare." The men leaned forward. They all loved challenges and bets. "I dare one of you to live like a regular person for 1 month. No credit cards, no fancy cars, no staff, just a normal job, a small apartment, and basic living." Everyone laughed again, but Robert didn't. Something about this dare caught his attention. "Impossible," said Thomas. "We wouldn't last a day." "Exactly," said David, "because you've forgotten how real life works." Robert suddenly stood up. The table went quiet. "I'll do it," he said firmly. 1 month as a regular person. How hard can it be?" Little did Robert know that these words would change his life forever. The next morning, Robert woke up early. Today was the day his dare would begin. His friends had set the rules last night after he accepted the challenge. 1 month living like a regular person, David had said. You can only take $1,500 for the whole month. You must find a small apartment to rent. You must look for a normal job. No using your name or connections. No luxury items. Robert had agreed to everything. Now, as he looked around his mansion for the last time, he felt both nervous and excited. Maria, his cook, was surprised when he told her he would be away for a month. "But sir, "Who will take care of your house?" she asked. "You and the staff will, as always," Robert said. "I just need some time away." Robert packed one small suitcase with plain clothes he had sent his assistant to buy yesterday. Nothing designer, nothing expensive. He put his credit cards and expensive watch in his safe. He took out $1,500 in cash. That was all he would have for the next 30 days. Instead of taking one of his fancy cars, Robert called a taxi. The driver was confused when Robert asked to be taken to the east side of the city, a working-class area where rent was cheap. "Are you sure, sir?" the driver asked. "That's not a very nice area." "I'm sure," Robert said. The taxi dropped him off at a small building with a rooms for rent sign. The paint was peeling off the walls. A dog barked somewhere nearby. Robert took a deep breath and went inside. The landlady was a short woman named Mrs. Lopes. She looked at Robert with suspicious eyes. "I need a room for 1 month," Robert said. "Something cheap." Mrs. Lopes studied him. "You don't look like my usual renters. Why would a man like you want to stay here?" Robert had prepared for this question. "I just got divorced. My wife took everything. I need a fresh start." Mrs. Lopez's face softened. "Ah, women. My second husband was the same story. I have a small room on the 3rd floor. $600 for the month. Pay now." Robert paid her and followed her up creaky stairs. The room was tiny, maybe the size of his bathroom at home. It had a small bed, a table with 1 chair, and a mini fridge. The bathroom was down the hall and shared with 3 other renters. "This is it," Mrs. Lopes said. "Take it or leave it." "I'll take it," Robert said, trying to hide his shock. After Mrs. Lopes left, Robert sat on the bed. It made a loud squeaking noise and sagged in the middle. He looked out the small window. Instead of seeing the whole city like from his mansion, he could only see the brick wall of the next building. "What have I gotten myself into?" he whispered. That afternoon, Robert walked around his new neighborhood. He passed small shops, a laundromat, and a cheap diner. People didn't move out of his way like they usually did. No one looked at him twice. He was invisible, just another face in the crowd. Robert bought a newspaper and sat in a small park. He turned to the job listings. He had never applied for a job in his life. His father had started the company, and Robert had taken over when he died. Now he needed to find work with no resume, no references, and no experience. One ad caught his eye. "Dishwasher needed. No experience necessary. Apply in person at Joe's Diner." Robert looked up. Across the street was Joe's Diner, the same place he had passed earlier. He watched people going in and out. The thought of washing dishes made his stomach turn. But he had made a promise. How hard can it be? He said to himself, standing up. "It's just dishes." As he crossed the street toward the diner, Robert had no idea that this simple job would be the first of many surprises waiting for him in the real world. Robert pushed open the door to Joe's Diner. A bell jingled above his head. The smell of fried food and coffee hit him at once. The place was half full with people eating late lunch. "Take any seat, hon," called a waitress with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag said Doris. "Actually, I'm here about the dishwasher job," Robert said. Doris looked him up and down. "Joe," she called toward the kitchen. "Someone here about the dishwasher job." A large man with a red face and hairy arms came out from the kitchen. He wore a dirty apron and had a small burn mark on his right hand. "You want to wash dishes?" Joe asked, wiping his hands on his apron. "Yes," Robert said, trying to sound confident. "Ever done it before?" Robert almost lied but stopped himself. "No, but I'm a fast learner." Joe laughed. "Dishwashing ain't rocket science. Pay is $12 an hour, cash at the end of each day. Start tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." Just like that, Robert had his first real job. No interview, no resume, no questions about his past. The next morning, Robert's alarm rang at 5 a.m. He had never woken up this early before. His body ached from the bad mattress. The shared bathroom was occupied, so he had to wait 10 minutes to brush his teeth. Robert arrived at Joe's diner at 5:55 a.m. Joe showed him to the kitchen and pointed at a huge sink filled with dirty dishes. "That's your office," Joe said. "Wash, rinse, dry, stack. Keep up with the flow or we all suffer." "Got it." Robert nodded, rolling up his sleeves. By 8 a.m., Robert's hands were red and wrinkled. His back hurt from standing. 3 times he had dropped plates, and Joe had shouted at him. By 10 a.m., Robert was ready to quit. This was nothing like running a company where people did what he told them to do. During his short break, Robert sat on a milk crate behind the diner. His hands were shaking. He thought about calling a taxi and going back to his mansion. No one would know if he quit. First day, huh? Robert looked up. A young woman had come out the back door. She wore a waitress uniform and had kind eyes. "Is it that obvious?" Robert asked. "Your hands are still soft," she said, sitting on another crate. "I'm Lily." "Robert." "The dish pit is the hardest job in the diner," Lily said. "But stick with it. Joe barks a lot, but he doesn't bite." Lily shared her sandwich with Robert. She talked about her 2 kids and how she was taking night classes to become a nurse. Robert had never met someone who worked so hard just to get by. After the break, Robert went back inside. The pile of dishes had grown even larger. But this time, he worked smarter. He organized the dishes by type. He found a rhythm. Wash, rinse, dry, stack. By the end of the day, Robert's whole body hurt, but he had kept up with the dishes. Joe grunted, which Lily said was his way of showing approval. He counted out $96 in cash and handed it to Robert. "See you tomorrow," Joe said. "You did okay for a first-timer." Walking back to his room, Robert looked at the money in his hand. It was nothing compared to what he made in a single minute from his business, but somehow this $96 felt different. He had earned it with his own hands. In his tiny room, Robert fell onto the bed, too tired to even change his clothes. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought about Lily and her dream of becoming a nurse. He thought about Joe and his hot, busy kitchen. He thought about all the people he had seen today, working hard for every dollar. For the first time in years, Robert fell asleep thinking about something other than himself. Days passed, and Robert settled into his new life. Each morning, he woke up early and went to Joe's diner. His hands got tougher. His arms grew stronger. The work was still hard, but he no longer felt like quitting. After a week, Joe moved Robert from just washing dishes to helping with simple food prep. He taught Robert how to cut vegetables and make basic breakfast items. "You learn quick," Joe said one day. "Most rich boys would have quit by now." Robert froze. "What do you mean, rich boys?" Joe laughed. "Come on, son. I wasn't born yesterday. Your hands were too soft. You talk too proper. You look at simple things like you've never seen them before. I don't know what your story is, and I don't care. You work hard, and that's all that matters to me." Robert was surprised but also relieved. Joe knew he was different, but didn't treat him differently. That Friday after work, Lily invited Robert to join some of the diner staff at a local place called Mike's Bar. Robert had never been to a place like Mike's before. It was small and noisy, with a jukebox playing old country songs. People were relaxed here, laughing and talking loudly. "First round's on me," Lily said, ordering beers for everyone. Robert reached for his wallet, wanting to buy drinks for the whole group like he would have done before. Then he remembered. He only had a few $100s left for the rest of the month. He needed to save it for rent and food. "Next time, I'll get the first round," he said instead. As they sat drinking beer and eating cheap bar food, Robert listened to his coworkers talk about their lives. Carlos, the cook, was saving to bring his mother from Mexico. Doris, the older waitress, was raising her grandchildren because her daughter was in jail. Everyone had struggles, but they also had dreams and laughed a lot. "What about you, Robert?" Lily asked. "What's your story?" Robert thought carefully. He couldn't tell them the full truth, but he didn't want to lie completely. "I had a different life before," he said. "I was successful, but not happy. I'm trying something new for a while." His new friends nodded. No one pushed for more details. They seemed to understand that everyone had a past. Later that night, as they walked out of the bar, Robert saw a woman trying to start her old car in the parking lot. The engine made a terrible noise but wouldn't start. "Car trouble?" Carlos asked, walking over. The woman looked close to tears. "I can't afford another repair. I need this car to get to work." Carlos opened the hood and looked inside. "Battery's dead, and your alternator doesn't look good either." In his old life, Robert would have just called someone to fix the problem or bought a new car without thinking. Now he stepped forward. "Let me look," he said. To everyone's surprise, including his own, Robert reached into the engine. He had learned about cars from his father, before fancy cars and drivers. 20 minutes later, the car started. It wasn't fixed properly. The alternator would still need replacement, but it would run long enough for the woman to get home. "Thank you," she said, her eyes meeting Robert's. "I'm Sarah." "Robert," he replied, wiping grease from his hands. For the first time, he felt proud of himself for something he had actually done, not something he had paid for. Walking back to his small room that night, Robert realized something important. In just 2 weeks, he had made real friends and helped someone without using money. He had worked hard and earned respect. Maybe this dare wasn't a mistake after all. 3 weeks into his dare, Robert woke up to loud knocking on his door. He opened it to find Mrs. Lopes, his landlady. "The building's water heater broke," she said. "No hot water for at least 3 days. The repair guy wants too much money to come sooner." Robert's first thought was to offer to pay for it. In his old life, he would have pulled out his checkbook, but now he had to live by the rules of his dare. "I might be able to look at it," Robert said. "My father taught me some things about water heaters." Mrs. Lopes looked surprised but led him to the basement. The water heater was old and rusty. Robert examined it carefully. "It's the heating element," he said. "We need a new one. Should cost about $80 for the part." "That's not so bad," Mrs. Lopes said. "But the plumber wants $300 for the work." "I can do it," Robert said. "Just need some basic tools." That afternoon, Robert fixed the water heater with tools borrowed from Carlos. Several residents watched him work, including an old man named Mr. Jenkins. "Where did a young man like you learn to do this?" Mr. Jenkins asked. "My father," Robert said, thinking of the times before his dad got rich, when they fixed things together around their small house. "He said a man should know how to work with his hands." When the hot water was running again, the residents cheered. Mrs. Lopes was so happy she gave Robert a free week of rent. The money he saved would help a lot, as his cash was running low. That evening, Robert was surprised to see Sarah, the woman whose car he had helped fix, waiting outside Joe's diner. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said. "Do you have time for coffee?" They went to a small coffee shop. Sarah worked as a teacher at the local elementary school. She told Robert about her students and how much she loved teaching despite the low pay. "Why do you stay if the pay is so bad?" Robert asked. Sarah smiled. "Not everything is about money. When a child finally understands something they've been struggling with, the look on their face is worth more than any paycheck." Robert had never thought this way. In his business, everything had a price tag. Their coffee turned into dinner at a cheap but good taco place. Sarah was easy to talk to. She didn't try to impress him or ask about his money like the women he usually dated. Walking back to his room later, Robert checked his phone for the first time in days. He had 47 missed calls from his office and business partners. A big deal was falling apart without him. In his old life, This would have been a disaster. But as he stood on the street looking at his phone, Robert realized something strange. He didn't care as much as he should. The business problems that once seemed so important now felt distant. The next morning, Robert went to work early. Joe was having trouble with the diner's accounts. Bills were piling up, and he was mixing up numbers. Numbers were never my thing, Joe said, frustrated. I'm good with numbers, Robert said. Let me help. During his break, Robert organized Joe's books. He found ways to save money on food orders and fixed billing errors that had cost Joe hundreds of dollars. Where did you learn to do this? Joe asked, amazed. I used to work in business, Robert said carefully. Joe studied him for a moment. Well, whatever business lost, you made a big mistake. You're worth your weight in gold. Robert smiled at the irony. In his company, he dealt with millions of dollars every day. Here, he was proud of saving a small diner a few $100s. With only 1 week left in his dare, Robert was starting to wonder which world was the mistake and which was the blessing. With just 5 days left in his dare, Robert faced a big problem. The local community center where Sarah volunteered was closing down. The owner of the building wanted to sell it to a company that would tear it down and build expensive apartments. Many kids have nowhere else to go after school, Sarah told Robert as they walked through the center. Children were playing games, doing homework, and making art. Some parents work 2 or 3 jobs. This place keeps the kids safe until their parents can pick them up. Robert looked around. The center wasn't fancy, but it was clean and full of life. In one corner, an old woman was teaching a young boy how to play chess. In another, teenagers were working on computers. How much does the owner want for the building? Robert asked. $2 million, Sarah said with a sad laugh. We've raised only $50,000 over the last 6 months. It's hopeless. Robert felt a strange pain in his chest. He could easily buy this building with his real money. But the dare wasn't over yet. He had to find another way to help. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the community center. In his old life, he would have seen the building as just a business opportunity. Now he saw it as a home for people who needed help. The next day, Robert called in sick to the diner. Instead, he went to the public library and used a computer. He searched for information about the company that wanted to buy the community center. It was owned by Hamilton Developments, one of Robert's business rivals. Robert picked up the phone and called his assistant, breaking one of the dare rules. Mr. Chen, his assistant said, shocked. Where have you been? Everyone is looking for you. Listen carefully, Robert said. I need information about Hamilton Development's plan to buy a community center on East Pine Street. 2 hours later, his assistant called back. They're planning to announce the purchase tomorrow, but they're having money problems. Their last 3 projects went over budget. Robert thought hard. Then he had an idea. He made another call, this time to his lawyer. The next day, Robert went to the community center where an emergency meeting was happening. The owner of the building was there with a man in an expensive suit, the representative from Hamilton Developments. I'm sorry, the owner was saying, but I've accepted their offer. The papers will be signed tomorrow. There's a problem with that, Robert said, walking to the front of the room. Everyone turned to look at him. Hamilton Developments can't buy this building. The man in the suit looked angry. And who are you to say that? Just a dishwasher, Robert said with a smile. But I happen to know that your company is about to lose its funding for this project. Your bank is pulling out tomorrow. The man's face went pale. That's impossible. How could you know that? Robert didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the room full of worried people. I have a proposal. Keep raising money. I know someone who might be willing to match whatever you raise, dollar for dollar. After the meeting, Sarah hugged Robert tightly. How did you do that? How did you know about their funding? Robert smiled. Let's just say I used to work in business. And this friend who will match the donations, who is he? Sarah asked. Someone who has more money than he needs, Robert said. Someone who's learning what really matters. That night, as Robert walked back to his small room, he felt different. For the first time in years, he felt like he was using his business knowledge for something good. With just 3 days left in his dare, Robert had to make a big decision. Should he go back to his old life, or was there a way to bring the best parts of both worlds together? 2 days before the dare would end, Robert sat on his small bed in the rented room. Tomorrow, he would meet his rich friends at their club to prove he had completed the challenge. Then he could go back to his mansion, his fancy cars, and his company. But the thought didn't make him happy anymore. Robert looked around the tiny room. Over the past month, it had become home. His expensive watch sat untouched in the corner. He hadn't even thought about it in weeks. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Mrs. Lopes. "There's a phone call for you downstairs," she said. "Some man who sounds very important." In the hallway was an old phone on the wall. Robert picked it up. "Hello, Robert, it's David." It was the friend who had first challenged him to take the dare. "I'm calling to remind you that tomorrow is the big day. We're all meeting at the club at noon. Don't be late." "I'll be there," Robert said. "So, how bad was it?" David asked, laughing. Living like a regular person must have been awful. Robert didn't know what to say. How could he explain that washing dishes had made him feel more useful than running his company? That fixing a water heater had given him more pride than buying a new yacht? That he had made real friends who liked him for himself, not his money? It was educational, Robert finally said. After hanging up, Robert walked to Joe's diner. He wasn't scheduled to work, but he wanted to see everyone one more time. Joe was surprised to see him. "Day off, kid. Go enjoy yourself." "I wanted to talk to you," Robert said. "I'm leaving in 2 days." Joe nodded slowly. "Figured you wouldn't stay forever. Got a better job offer." "Something like that," Robert said. "But I wanted to thank you for giving me a chance." "You're a good worker," Joe said. "Always welcome back if things don't work out." As Robert turned to leave, Joe called after him. "Hey, we're having a little party tonight at Lily's place. Nothing fancy. You should come say goodbye to everyone." That evening, Robert went to Lily's small apartment. All his coworkers were there. Carlos had brought homemade tacos. Doris had baked a cake. Even Mr. Jenkins from his building was there. "Sarah's coming too," Lily told Robert with a wink. "She asked if you would be here." When Sarah arrived, she hugged Robert tight. "I have amazing news. After you left the other day, donations started pouring in for the community center. We've already raised another $30,000. "That's great," Robert said, feeling both happy and sad. After tomorrow, he could easily save the center with his own money. But would Sarah look at him the same way when she found out who he really was? As the night went on, everyone shared stories and laughed together. They treated each other like family. Robert realized he had never felt this way with his rich friends. These people cared about each other, not what they could get from each other. Late that night, as the party was ending, Sarah walked with Robert back to his building. "You've been different today," she said. "Is everything okay?" Robert stopped walking. He had to tell her the truth. "Sarah, I haven't been completely honest with you," he said. "I'm not really a dishwasher. I mean, I am right now, but tomorrow." "Tomorrow what?" she asked. "Tomorrow I have to make a choice," Robert said. "The biggest choice of my life." As they stood under a streetlight, Robert knew that whatever he decided tomorrow would change everything forever. The next day, Robert woke up early. This was the day he would meet his rich friends and show them he had completed the dare. He put on his cleanest shirt and looked at himself in the small cracked mirror on the wall. Last night, he had told Sarah part of the truth, but not everything. He had told her he was actually a businessman who had taken time off to live differently. He had not told her just how rich he really was. "I need to figure some things out," he had told her. "Can we talk tomorrow night?" Sarah had looked confused, but had agreed. Now, as Robert walked toward the fancy club where his rich friends would be waiting, he felt strange in a way he couldn't explain. The tall buildings around him used to make him feel powerful. Now they just looked cold and empty. Outside the club, Robert stopped. Through the window, he could see his old friends sitting at their usual table. They were laughing and drinking expensive drinks, just like they had been when he left a month ago. Nothing had changed for them, but everything had changed for Robert. He pushed open the heavy door and walked in. The club manager recognized him immediately. "Mr. Chen, welcome back, sir. Your usual table is ready." His friends turned and stared. For a moment, no one spoke. Then they all started talking at once. "Robert, you actually did it. You look terrible. Did you really live like a poor person for a whole month?" Robert sat down in his old chair. It felt too soft now. He was used to hard wooden chairs at Joe's diner. "I did it," he said simply. "I lived on $1,500 for a month. I rented a small room. I worked as a dishwasher." David, who had started the dare, looked impressed. "I honestly didn't think you would last a week. You win the bet." William, another friend, pushed a check across the table. "Here's the money we all bet. $1 million, as agreed." Robert looked at the check. A month ago, this would have made him happy. Now it seemed almost funny. He had nearly killed himself working for $12 an hour, and here was $1 million just for completing a dare. "So tell us," Thomas said, leaning forward. "How awful was it? The tiny apartment, the terrible food, working with your hands." All his friends waited for him to complain about his month of suffering. They wanted funny stories about how hard it had been. Robert looked at their faces. These men had been his friends for years, but had they ever really cared about him? Or just his money and power? "It wasn't what I expected," Robert said slowly. "Of course not." William laughed. "It must have been much worse." "No," Robert said. "It wasn't worse. It was better." His friends stopped laughing and stared at him. "Better?" Thomas asked. "How could being poor be better than being rich?" Robert thought about Joe, who worked harder than anyone he knew. About Lily, who was raising kids and going to school. About Mrs. Lopes, who took care of her building with pride. About Mr. Jenkins, who shared his food with neighbors who had less. About Sarah, whose eyes lit up when she talked about teaching children. "I met real people," Robert said. "People who work hard and help each other. People who care about more than money." His friends looked uncomfortable. "Well, the important thing is that it's over now," David said. "You can go back to your real life." Robert stood up suddenly, making the others jump. "That's just it," he said. "I'm not sure which life is real anymore." Then he did something that shocked everyone in the club. He tore up the $1 million check and walked out the door. After leaving the club, Robert walked for hours through the city. He passed his tall office building where people were working late. He walked by expensive stores where he used to shop without looking at price tags. Everything looked different to him now. As the sun began to set, Robert found himself in front of the community center. Inside, he could see children playing and volunteers helping with homework. Sarah was there, reading a book to small children who sat in a circle around her. Robert took a deep breath and went inside. When Sarah saw him, she smiled and waved. After finishing the story, she walked over to him. "You look nice today," she said. "Different." "Sarah, I need to show you something," Robert said. "Can you come with me?" They walked together for 20 minutes until they reached a part of the city with big houses and perfect lawns. Robert stopped in front of the largest house, his mansion. "What are we doing here?" Sarah asked, looking confused. "This is my house," Robert said simply. Sarah stared at him, then at the house, then back at him. "I don't understand." Robert told her everything. How he was actually Robert Chen, owner of Chen Enterprises. How his friends had dared him to live like a regular person for a month. How he had taken the dare thinking it would be easy. "So it was all just a game to you?" Sarah asked, her voice hurt. Working at the diner, helping at the center, being my friend. It started as a game, Robert admitted, but it became the most real thing I've ever done. He told her how empty his rich life had felt, how the past month had shown him what really mattered, how he had torn up $1 million check today because money no longer seemed important. I don't know who I am anymore, Robert said, the rich businessman or the dishwasher, but I know which one was happier. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "So what will you do now?" The next morning, Robert called a meeting at his company. All his top managers came, surprised to see their boss after his month away. "I have an announcement," Robert told them. "I'm changing how this company works." He laid out his new plan. The company would donate half its profits to community programs. They would build affordable housing instead of luxury apartments. They would hire people from struggling neighborhoods and pay fair wages. "But sir," one manager protested, "this will cost us millions." "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes," Robert said. "What's the point of making more if it doesn't help people?" Some managers quit that day. Others stayed, excited about the new direction. That afternoon, Robert visited Joe's diner. He sat at the counter and ordered coffee. "Heard you aren't coming back to wash dishes," Joe said, placing a cup in front of him. "News travels fast," Robert said with a smile. "Sarah told Lily. Lily told everyone else," Joe explained. "So you're really the Robert Chen?" "Yes. But I'd still like to help here sometimes," Robert said. "Maybe I could fix your broken oven." Joe laughed. "A billionaire fixing my oven. Why not?" 6 months later, Robert still lived in his big house, but it wasn't empty anymore. Community groups used the large rooms for meetings. Children from the center swam in his pool. And Sarah, now his fiancée, had moved in, bringing warmth to every corner. Robert still ran his company, but he worked at the diner 1 day each week. He fixed things for Mrs. Lopes when they broke. He donated millions to the community center, which now had a new building with his parents' names on it. What had started as a rich man's dare had become the greatest blessing of Robert's life. By losing himself, he had found everything that truly mattered.